I'm ready.
All right. Well, good morning. So we did not record last week's, even though Sarah and I did do our discussion, but I barely could even get phone reception where I was last week, which was awesome. But yeah, what a huge week that was too. So
Right. Yeah, I mean, I got to look back at my notes.
we talked about, let me see, because I didn't, it's funny that I just did not do very much journaling while I was on vacation because we were going all the time. But I did journal that day.
Yeah, I did write a lot last week.
Okay. So last week we talked about how we, we've talked about the resolution and completion of the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and then the completion together in the wholeness, right? Because I had, in going to the sequoias, I recognized the energy of, it was so interesting in how the redwoods feel so wholly divine feminine, and the sequoias feel like a really transcended divine masculine. And we were talking about that difference in energy and how beautiful they both were, and how, the importance of that, bringing that together. Well, then we got to talking about,
I have divine light, divine dark.
well, we got to that. Yeah. Then we got to go beyond that, going, well, that's only just a part of it. And we talk about all the time about, we perceive it to be going into the light, we talk about darkness and even resolving that and incorporating it into the light, except the light and dark were that the realization was looking at the light and the dark and how they were created from beyond that, right? So we sort of lose our perspective because we're talking about the creative void, right? And that's where we were talking about the creative void is really that origination and the place of all potential, which is truly a divine consciousness, right? And that's where we came up with, well, what we never look at is the divine light and the divine dark, which really seems like a little tweak, but is a huge difference in perspective, right?
Right.
Because how often do you hear people call the darkness divine?
Exactly.
So we worked on the completion resolution of that.
And then remove whatever stands between me and pure potential.
Yep. Remember and embody pure potential. And that's really what we focused on last week, which was interesting, being on vacation, holiday or whatever. Now you're on vacation. I was so big we both needed to be on vacation for that.
That's right.
And we talked about breaking the matrix. That was another thing I wrote down, is like basically that breaks the matrix. When we recognize both the dark and the light as divine, right? And realize that divine consciousness is not the light or the dark, but actually more than that it's all within it.
Right. And I have written that if you're always seeking or searching for a wrong to right, you'll always find something because you're creating it. And that just be all of it.
Yeah.
And then I wrote all of the time, but if there is no time, that's kind of irrelevant.
Yeah, always, right? Be all of it in every moment.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Essentially, we just don't recognize it. And we don't, part of what we have limited ourselves with is because we don't recognize it, that we're beyond the light and the dark, that we're more than that, right?
Right.
That
more than that separation.
We're only utilizing even a smaller percentage of our potential.
Yeah.
Woo! That's huge, right?
It was and still is, yeah.
It was interesting because I had such an interesting experience with my whole vacation. And I was observing the whole time. And I felt like it was interesting that I was really pretty much present in the 3D And yeah, I did some meditation and stuff, but it was like I was present and aware, but I wasn't in the same, well, I didn't perceive myself to be in the same place as I typically am, right, day to day. And it felt like, and so, I wanted to judge myself. I wanted to, am I limiting myself because I'm on vacation with my family? Am I bringing myself into a different place? And at some point I realized, well, yeah, except that, where were we? We were, in Yosemite, and we were in, Sequoia, which were just phenomenally amazing, energetic places, of expansion and hugeness, that I realized I literally gave myself a vacation in the 3D. Like, it was like, no, but you want to take vacation. This is vacation. Like, what's vacation to us is like the more conscious we become is allow yourself to be fully present in the 3D, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we just want to take a vacation from seeing all the dots connecting and seeing all this and seeing all that. Except I kept on getting messages like very clearly every couple of steps, like, yeah, don't worry. You're all supported. It's all coming together. You don't even have to, you're on vacation. Don't worry. Don't worry your pretty little head about that. As they say in the South, right? So it was, the bumpiness on us getting there and coming back had to do with, I realized partially with me, like sort of like not descending, but allowing myself to just fully be in that space, that I'm not typically in. And then coming back, and not coming back, but just then, allowing myself to be like, okay, I got it. And I'll tell you what, since I got back, my meditations have been just incredible, like phenomenal. And clarity just flows in really easily. And so that's been really cool. How about you?
It's been, the interesting part is I guess you call it the clarity, but just the ease of seeing things from that different perspective. Mm-hmm. And having the almost like you said a minute ago, like the relax and just enjoy it. Mm-hmm. From it's like the realization that I've created this, and if I don't like it, I need to create something different. Otherwise, enjoy it.
Right.
And I mean that's just huge. And it's like it empowers the judgment to make things different versus just sit and bitch about it. Mm-hmm. Which I think we tend to enjoy that. and it's like, it's not, I hate to even use the word judgment because we've vilified that word, but it's more of an observation of, this isn't really where I want to be, so I want to do something different. Right. And switching to living from that place it's at first it was hard to break the patterns, but now it's just like, God, that feels so much better. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I can feel when things start getting icky again, and it's like, oh, that's because I'm not in that place of, I created this, so I'm going to enjoy it. Mm-hmm. Or I'm going to make it different. And whether that's my attitude different or literally, take myself out of that place. So I really, really find that a valuable way of being. I don't even want to call it a tool.
Yeah, no, you're right. Well, that's in, yeah, this is so beyond words. This is like, here we go back to the so beyond words. I'm like, okay, so give me some words, Steve, and like talk about what that is, but it's.
Well, and I found when we went out there that it was like crossing, in the beginning it was like crossing through a gate. Mm-hmm. Or crossing over a river or some kind of
right, the gate thing, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some kind of boundary. And that when it was time to come back, it's like I had to be different to come back. Well, what I've worked on all through the week was just coming back and not having to be different. And wow, that's really that's been very powerful every time I've gone into meditation is that bringing back what I felt out there was easier and easier and easier. So now that I would call a tool. But it was very stabilizing. I don't know a better word for it. It allowed more of the integration of that wholeness connectivity.
Yeah.
Here, without sacrificing anything.
Right.
You know, which we feel like, well, we can't be in this form, or we can't be in this density, or we can't. Well, that's not true.
Well, that's the thing. It's time to resolve all the can'ts, right?
Yeah.
And let them go. Like, so it's interesting that I'll bring in my movie references. So over the weekend, excuse me, there's a yawn. Over the weekend, we went to see The Incredibles 2, right? Because I love the first one. Anyway, so we went there, and what was so interesting about The Incredibles was that the whole villain in this particular, which I enjoyed the movie, right? Overall, I loved it, right? But the villain in this movie, the whole motivation of the villain was that the belief that people were too dependent on superheroes, and so superheroes had to be, illegalized, right?
Right.
So that because people were lazy and and didn't tend to tend to themselves and all that kind of stuff.
To be saved.
They just wanted to be saved. And I'm sitting there thinking, so funny that we would villainize that. But it's it's like we have so much of that ingrained in us. It's such a deep level, right? Because I'm going, well, I pretty much agree.
Right, yeah.
And if you look at our society today, like we might not have what we call that, like that in our physical, but look at how the overabundance of superhero movies and TV shows and everywhere right now, right? So then I'm like, okay, so is it limiting? And I look at that and I'm like, well, yeah, because then people start, like it's still that energy of somebody else will save me, right? Somebody else who has powers will save me, right?
And it's outside of me.
Right. But then I'm wondering, is a part of it to become such an over preponderance, like a huge preponderance of it, till we finally look in the mirror, so that we finally look in the mirror and say, well, wait, I'm the superhero.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So there's two sides to that coin, and really interesting to consider, right?
Well, and I mean, you take it, you can take that a little degree of separation and say, isn't that what the drug companies are doing? Mm-hmm. You can't do this on your own. You need to take this pill. Mm-hmm. So it's just a form of rescue.
Well, it's interesting because, part of what I'm working on is rewriting all my stuff and, repackaging and all that kind of stuff, right? Which I know you are too.
Right.
So what's really a challenge has been finding that tangibility, right?
Right. Yeah.
But the thing is, I've gotten to this place of, well, people come to me. Why? Because they know there's something outside of the box, but they just don't know how to get out of it. Right. And so I wrote this actually right in my journal. I was sitting right here. There's a box. And I was like, what is the box? Right. So the box is really all that externalization. It's culture. It's society. It's doctors. It's your parents. It's your siblings. It's your kids.
It's even values.
Yeah. It's standards and beliefs, and 3D structure and creation. And so, it's like it's just like, well, it's not that the box is bad. It's that if we let ourselves just live inside the box, we'll never see what's outside of it. Right. And when you look, and I'm thinking of it from a sacred geometry standpoint, because the cube is a very powerful representation in itself, but then there's so much more, right? It's just right. Things. So if everybody's just allowing themselves in the 3D to live inside that box, then there's a lot you're missing. right? And that's
yeah.
a holographic picture.
Right.
So yeah, and that's that disempowerment. That's the giving away, because that's to stay inside the box. I've got to be this kind of person. I have to do this kind of thing. I have to, I have to have ailments. I have to be sick. I have to be a victim. I have to let somebody else tell me what to do.
I have to age.
There's so many. Yeah, so many. So maybe that's what we focus on today, is allowing that, because that goes back to that's really zoned in, right? Zoned into this really finite thing. I actually brought my sacred geometry book in here because I was thinking about the cube thing right before we started. And I wanted to look up what it says about the cube in here. Well, I have this square. And the square is about Earth, which is funny, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So, which is the box.
Yeah.
And male energy, which is, we can translate that to the separation-based creation. But there's these are all these subsets of that. Goes back to that divine light and the divine darkness, and that original duality and the triality, of the duality and the wholeness.
Right.
Yeah. So square is about security, basically staying in the box and, in a place, a secure place. So we can have that, but we don't have to have the box and stay within it, because the box is part of so many other things. Right. But, yeah, that's like I said, that's zoned in really to tiny, minutia. And we talked about a lot of this by going back to being able to be of it, in it and not of it,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which is this whole thing. So where do we go from here?
Well, I was trying to come up with, without the limits of the box, but what's the opposite of limit? You don't want to use limitless, unlimited, which has led me in my head to, what's wholeness? Because you can't define wholeness without separation.
Well, and then it goes back to just allowing that
right
embodiment of potential of
right. Right.
And allowing all is possible, and I allow it to be so. And I've been completely divorced from the ails of the world over the past 2 weeks, because it was great, honestly. And I typically am anyway, but at least I have some kind of connection via clients and students and stuff like this. I had no, like I said, for a good portion of the trip, I had almost no signal. I didn't have a phone. We had no Wi-Fi. It just was, because the message was disconnect and just be a part of this. So, it's interesting because some of the things that you recognize. So, for example, we have so much judgment, and we could, I don't know, we're just going around and finding our spot. We'll get there. We have so much judgment around trying to control things, what we think is supposed to be right. Okay.
Right.
And what's a perfect example of this that I did notice when I was away were the sequoia trees, because they're protected, and apparently the germination of a sequoia seed is almost like winning the lottery, right? Because literally this is the kind of tree that the pine cone has to be heated to a certain temperature for it to even open up and dry the seed out to allow the seed to be ready to germinate, right? Which means it requires fire at some point, right? So what the guide that we had hired to go hiking with us in Yosemite had told us, which I thought that was really interesting. He said, the challenge you're having in the sequoias, because, you know, if you go to the redwood forest, as we have, right, the redwood forest is so fun, and it's all these huge, amazing, overwhelming trees. The sequoias you see spotted, you know, like there's some of them, there's a couple here, but they're all interspersed with these white pines and other things. So this is a great example of when we believe something and then we put it in a box because that's what we believe, like how it limits it, because we took it upon ourselves to say, oh, we're going to suppress the fires out here because that naturally happen every year. Right. So we did that for, I think the guy said 100 years. I think we suppressed the fires for like 100 years. And in the 100 years that we suppressed the fires out there, like really, really adamantly, the white pines came in and started, you know, growing in amongst the sequoias. And then what happens with pines, you know, is they change the acidity of the soil so that many other trees just won't grow in it. Right? It makes it even harder for the sequoias to germinate and whatever. So then they realized the sequoias were dying out and they just couldn't figure out why. And they weren't, you know, like repopulating and whatever. And then they realized, oh, wait, the fire has something to do with them actually growing. And that's our judgment on saying, oh, fires are bad.
Right.
Except fire is, you know, like there are many trees that are dependent on having a regular fire to clear out something, you know.
And a lot of disease control.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, because they're like, well, when the fires naturally happen, those pines don't typically survive very, very much.
Right.
Which gives them the room to actually grow, and it keeps the soil balanced.
Right.
You know, so that it's a much more, you know, fertile ground for them. So these are all of these and this is one example of so many things when we get stuck in controlling a situation and saying, no, this is supposed to happen. And if this doesn't happen, then somehow I failed in my creation and it's wrong and I did it wrong, right? How many clients have come to me and they're like, well, I created this and I wanted this to be created and look at what's happened. And I'm like, okay, but it's really, if you look at it from the bigger picture, exactly what you created, exactly what you wanted.
Yeah.
So, and I believe it has to do with our mindset of separating light and dark, what we, you know, because we categorize and put things in boxes, right? This is good and this is bad.
Right. Or, I mean, this is spiritual, this is not.
Right.
This is enlightenment, this is not.
And it is so diluted down to the individual because of individual journeys that there's no consistency. So that's how it goes back to judging being a limiting factor and the ego-based and separation-based, because the judgment is there's a right and a wrong.
Right.
There goes my camera again. I don't know why this thing just doesn't like stuff. Anyway, so maybe that's what, so what do we focus on there? We focus on allowing, I mean, really, that's truly what the vacation was about, was, you know what, I'm not going to even sit here and try to manage this, like, just let it go.
Right.
You know,
there's so much of that that eases the burden of where we are. And I think that's what people are having a hard time with now, because things are shifting and changing, and it's almost like the rules have changed, but we don't know that. And if you just let go, then it all just settles in. Right.
And I mean, it even started at the beginning of my vacation when we were going out there. We were delayed. Like, I had both delays at both ends. It was just such an interesting thing. And so going out there, we were delayed out of Raleigh. And then I had said, and what I said was, oh, that's fine, because probably our connection will be delayed and we'll still make it, right? Which is what happened, except it was really delayed. So we ended up it was like 3 hours delayed. We ended up not getting into like the wee hours in the morning, and we had plans like first thing in the morning the next day. So it was interesting, because I was like, well, that was odd, because typically when I travel, it's really smooth and easy and like effortless and everything else. And it really, you know, and amidst the complaining of my family, I was just like, it is what it is.
Right.
I'm like,
Right.
we're going to get there and it'll be perfect no matter what it's supposed to be, no matter what it looks like. Right.
Well, and did the complaining get you there any faster? Did
No.
it change anything? Which is, you know, we sat in traffic for so long, and it's like, it just is what it is.
It is. And then coming home was even worse, because worse in the way of that was even more like we were at the airport, we got delayed, and then we missed our connection. There was no other flight we'd be able to catch. So we ended up having to stay an extra night in San Francisco. And, you know, and everybody was upset because, you know, after a week and a half, you're just ready to sleep in your own bed kind of thing or whatever.
Right.
But it was like, well, there's nothing we could do about it. So why don't we just be okay with where we are today and right now? And, you know, I was guided and pushed to get what we got, which, you know, we got the airlines to cover us at the hotel and all that kind of stuff. And
you bet.
And then after that, it was just like, okay. And then we just do this again tomorrow. But, you know, and part of it had to do with like shifting gears, and part of it was just being in this surrender role of accepting that everything is perfect no matter what it looks like, right? Because then it was really funny, because then the next thing was, then my kids were worried, because then we didn't have our luggage, because the luggage was on the plane that we ended up not taking because of the connection being missed and whatever. And they're worried about the suitcases not getting home and this and that. And I said, no, you know what? It'll be fine. In fact, they'll probably get there before us, or they'll get there on the same flight we will, because we ended up taking a 6:00 flight through Denver, which was the same place we were going originally. So, and they worked. What happened is they worked. Did that thing just do that again?
It did flip. Yeah.
So, yeah. And so we got off the plane, went down to baggage, and I looked over at the baggage room, and there were our suitcases sitting there, you know, in the area to claim, you know, they've gotten there. And I was like, we'll see. And I didn't even stress. The thing that got me stressed was everybody else getting stressed. And I'm like, just let it go.
Right.
I'm like, hey, this is why I told everybody to make sure you took off another day after we got back, just in case, if anything.
So you created that.
Yeah. Of course I did.
So you created it, so enjoy it.
That's right. And I was fine. Actually, it was funny because it was this little town outside of San Francisco that we ended up staying in, because it was like right by the airport. And it was a beautiful little town. And what was funny is that we got diverted traffic-wise to go through it, going to the airport to begin with. And I said, oh, maybe this is a town we need to look at, maybe eventually coming to, you know, or something. As my husband and Scott and I were walking around, going to the store and stuff that night. So anyway, and part of it was this. And so some people would be like, oh, that's awful. And I'm just like, well,
not really.
Yeah. It is what it is. I mean, it could have been, it can always be worse.
Right.
So, you know, and I don't even like looking at it that way. I like looking at it as well. Okay, but look at how we benefited from this. You know, we got the hotel, we got to hang out here one more night, and we loved this area so much. You know, it was like, so what's the complaint about?
Right. And
not only that, but we got 2 hotel rooms because there were 4 of us. And like where we've been sharing hotel rooms and suites or whatever the whole time. So I was like, oh my God, we all have our rooms. It's nice.
Well, and I guarantee that if you had missed that flight and it had crashed, you would have been thankful that you weren't on that plane.
Well, and that's exactly what I said, because I said, well, I would rather get there safely and alive than not get there at all. So you just never know. Because It was a mechanical issue, apparently, that happened with the plane. So I was like, okay.
Yeah. So,
but we get so frustrated, you know, and like I always tell people, like, so you get stuck in traffic, right? So how do you know that if you weren't delayed, that you would have been in the place at the time that would cause you to get into an accident and get
right? Exactly. Exactly.
You don't know because you're not seeing the bigger picture. And you allow yourself to surrender to it, to say, all right, I just trust that it's perfect.
Right.
No matter what it looks like here. And this is to like the umpteenth degree. I mean, if we look at the sequoias and the fire and look at how we screwed up the ecosystem because we were like, oh no, we have to control this. The fires are bad.
Yeah, we have to protect them. We have to, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so how many times do we say that about people, our kids, right? I have to protect my kids, so I don't want them to do this, and I don't want to allow them to do this, or I want to do this for them. But then
you're preventing their growth.
Yes. You're preventing them from learning their lessons and their journeys so that they can grow and move forward and that not be dependent on you.
Right.
So, and that goes true and so we're sort of in that place here in the 3D now is, okay, so now our higher self is saying, yeah, time to fly without that dependence on the doctors and the culture and everybody around you and getting back to that inner guidance.
Right.
And listening to and knowing that, by the way, all of that is just a reflection of stuff that's already inside of you. There's nothing outside of you that isn't already inside. And all we've done is gotten lazy in accessing it here because it's so separate, right?
Right. Right.
Like, okay. And that goes back to the whole thing in the and it's funny that we say what happens in culture. Oh God, I can't believe that person just didn't go to the doctor for this. Like, like they're a bad person for not, and people talk about it as abuse, about not going to a doctor right away or going on, so it's so weird how we judge. There's so much judgment. And I was even just totally aware of that through the vacation. There's so much judgment about even the littlest things. And it's like, wow, we waste so much energy on judgment. If we just took that energy away and just laid in this place of acceptance and love, how much more power we give ourselves and our energy that we could focus on that remembrance, right, of all potential, of embodying potential.
Right. And give people credit for just doing the best that they know how to do in that moment.
Right. Yeah. So where do we go for that?
I don't know. I think we hit on it earlier before we rambled off again. And I guess it's just that allowing. Allowing the pure potential.
And trusting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's a big one.
And we come back to that over and over again, but trusting is our biggest challenge in 3D.
Oh, yeah. Water level. We fill it up with that? No. We don't have a tea kettle, so we're boiling water on the stove.
It works.
It does.
So, yeah, trusting, allowing potential, all pure potential, and all, yeah.
I don't know if we want to say anything about allowing the resolution of judgment. Wow, I almost couldn't even find that word.
Allowing the what of judgment?
Resolution, or boy, that feels really good to me.
It really does.
I'm getting lost in the shift already.
The resolution and completion of judgment. Yeah.
Yeah, I almost said death. Yeah, all of that. The resolution or
Yeah, I think we should just say all of that.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know, trusting,
definitely.
allowing all potential, allowing the resolution, completion of judgment. And we can still throw in what we covered last week, out of space and time.
Oh,
About
absolutely.
that, allowing, let me go back to
Because
it.
that was almost like a stepping stone to this.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
embodiment of blah, blah, blah. God, it's so funny. I can't, 5 minutes ago, I can't remember what it was. Remembering embodying your potential. Well, that's part of today too, right?
Yeah, because I have removed whatever stands between me and pure potential, which this is more of okay, if you remove the last week we removed what stood between us, and now it's allowing and trusting
Yep. Remembering embodying and then allowing.
being from that place. Oh God, that feels good.
Yeah.
Allowing and trusting
Ooh, I can feel that
being,
shift in my chest here.
that feels really good.
Yep.
Allowing and trusting being in pure potential.
Just
Oh, I
being,
like that.
because it's truly being the
Being pure potential. Yeah. Yeah, because being in something still puts it outside of you.
oh, that feels being pure potential feels even more powerful than allowing all potential.
Yep.
Oh, I
Yeah.
just like all tingly from that.
I
So.
know.
All right, then. I think we're ready.
I think so too.
All right, let's go.
All right.
All right, you there?
I am, I guess, back. I don't think there is a back anymore.
Yeah. Oh, that was really, really nice.
The word that kept coming to me was muscle memory.
Yeah.
what we have to lose is that. And I really felt my muscles change. And I saw us as like, I want to say hot air balloons, but it had the force behind it of rockets, but yet we were tethered, like they do hot air balloons, they have that.
Yeah.
And it's like, once we let go of the tethers, it was like we were floating, but we were like scrambling, like, oh my God, what do we do? What do we do? And it was just like, let go. And it was just amazing freedom. And it was like effortless, but it was that powerful effortlessness instead of just like limbo that we think of as like nothingness kind of, but this was like powerful nothingness.
Powerfulness. Yeah. Yeah, I saw like, so you're saying muscle memory. I saw down to the cells and it was like it was getting washed out.
Yep.
Right. Because I saw like cell walls almost just getting washed out. Like, okay, no need now.
Right.
And it was it felt so freeing. It was like, oh, and I could just stay there forever. That was just like amazing. And then I saw, so I'm still not, all right, so I didn't bring this up because I don't even know how this fits in, but it came up in my meditation this morning. So in my meditation this morning, I was with some other entity who brought me to this tree, funny, right? Oh. And said, and was helping me. And we had to, it was almost like, when they do the nuclear bomb, like the nuclear bombs or whatever, you have to have two people turn the key or something like that,
Right.
Safes, right, at the same time. So it was like, we put this thing in the tree or opened a little latch in the tree and we both had to turn it at the same time. And we did that. It was like I wrote down in my journal, like all I could understand was I was being helped to remember to access the crystal phoenix, which I was like, never even seen one of those. Right. But all of a sudden this amazing creature was there and it was just incredible. So I wrote that down in my journal right before, we had gotten on. So what was funny is when we were
talking about the trees, I kept singing Phoenix.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, right, with the fire.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right.
So when we were out there, it was like I went through all that and I'm like seeing all that wash away, and then and there was something else, and then all of a sudden there's this amazing creature, like, and this is that crystal phoenix or crystalline phoenix or whatever it was, and it was just, of course, it's us, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Much bigger presence, and it just sort of like it wrapped itself around us, like so that we could remember,
right.
all of it, and it was just like so expansive. Like I can't even explain what it did. It just was so beautiful, and so we'll see where that takes us this week. It's always a journey.
Yeah, well, and I remember feeling as the muscle memory was lost that you think of the core, and I kept seeing that being, I don't want to say rebuilt, but almost like
reclaimed.
Yeah, transmuted kind of, and I saw it go down, and it was like everything, it was like everything originated from there, and so at that point everything was different. And it was just like, oh yeah.
Yep. Exactly. It's like, oh yeah, this is nice. And funny enough that Minerva hardly ever comes in, when we're doing this, and she, in the middle of it, suddenly she was like pawing at me. She like was on her hind legs like, hey, and I'm like, okay, I don't know, just join in.
Yeah.
That was pretty wild. Oh, well, on that was fabulous, as always. So everybody can just sort of soak that up and play in that this week.
Yeah.
What a great place for you to be by the ocean.
And I've got water on both sides of me.
Nice.
Well, I'm on an island. Of course I do.
Yeah, nice.
So, yeah.
So thank you for joining, and we will see y'all next week. Thanks a lot.